Femi, okay. Today on the stream, we're talking about Indian matchmaking, the process of arranged marriage, and also Indian matchmaking, the Netflix TV series. It hit Netflix in July. It was a huge instant hit. It was binge-worthy. Here's a clip.
Cheers.
Cheers.
What would be like a relaxing 10 days for you? What would you do for 10 days?
Why did you put the word relaxing in front of it?
Can you relax?
Not for me. I will talk to you never.
So fickle-minded and fussy. And I'm here to help them. In India, the marriages, they are between two families. So the parents guide their children, and that is the work of a matchmaker. Very nice person, understands sense of humor.
You know how I hate comedy.
The clients, they want everything.
Someone charming.
Equal to my pay or higher.
Adjustment is also important.
You have to be attracted to the person and the person has to be good. I don't think that it's a lot to ask for.
I'm really close to my mom and I wholeheartedly trust her judgment.
If he doesn't finalize, me and my husband are going to finalize the girl for him. That is what I have decided.
People have so many opinions about Indian matchmaking. You can share yours by jumping into the YouTube comments, and you too can be part of this conversation. I'm going to say hello to the guests. The guests will introduce themselves to you. Hello, Smriti. Great to have you here on the stream. Tell everybody who you are. Go ahead, do your own introduction. Yes. Cue the filmmaker. Action.
All right. I'm Smriti Mundhra. I'm the creator and executive producer of Indian Matchmaking.
Great having you. Hello, Sunil. Welcome to the stream. Tell everybody who you are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sunil Hiranandani. I'm the founder of Surf Coffee, a dating service for Indians around the world.
Great to have you. And hello, Paru. Welcome to the stream. Introduce yourself to our international audience.
Hi, very happy to be here. I'm Parul Bhandari. I'm an associate professor of sociology at Jindal Global University in India, and my PhD was on matchmaking practices in India.
So what happened, Parul, do you think, in July when everybody started to watch Indian matchmaking? With your professional expertise at play, what could you say actually happened? Why did it?
Well, I mean, there were two reasons broadly. One is that people could relate to this show. So many, at least several Indians, many of them, and at least even the people that I worked with, I researched on, urban Indians, many of them have solicited services of matchmakers. So there was this one element of it, which is that we can relate to it, we understand what's happening. And then there was another group which also felt that, look, this is what happens, this is how Indian patriarchy works, this is how colorism works, and obviously when it's sort of right there in your face, staring at in your face, you just feel, you feel overwhelmed and you feel angry as well.
Yeah, and it gets personal. Let me show you some of the beautiful pictures. You created this amazing world of romance, Smriti. I'm going to show some of the pictures here for some of the couples. Have a look here on my laptop. And what also you were doing was bringing into the mainstream, right across the world, what it's like to date for a life partner. Tell us more. What was the plan?
You know, the idea was to create a dating show from the very culturally specific point of view of middle class and upper middle class Indians. There's no one show that can represent the entire experience of 1.4 billion Indian people around the world. So the slice of life that we focused on for this first season in particular was, through Sima and through her clients, Sima from Mumbai, our matchmaker, and through her clients. And I wanted to really examine the aspects of, I think arranged marriage is a very triggering term. And I think if you watch the show, you'll see that the way we use that word is the loosest definition. There are instances where, people have complete agency. There are people who find, their life partners on their own on the show. And there are people who go through a more traditional arranged marriage, route, a somewhat more traditional arranged marriage route. So there's a wide spectrum. I think that's what we were trying to show. And also, just show that the tension between our traditions and our modern selves, I think we're very much in that in that transitional phase right now, particularly with this generation. So for me, it's interesting as a filmmaker, it's interesting to examine that dynamic through the lens of something that's as relatable as dating and marriage.
Let me get you some instant feedback here from YouTube. Hi, YouTubers. Nice to see you. Kim Barlow, I enjoyed the show. It was interesting to see how Indian culture views marriage. Connor Chalmers, I love this series. It was so good. Season 2 soon, please. And then also, Hamkeep says, and I'm going to put this to you, Sunil, that matchmaking is a great way to help shy people get married. Sunil.
Well, not just shy people, but all sorts of people, I think. I mean, I got into this business because, as Smriti pointed out, you've got 1.5 billion people roughly around the world. And for some reason, as if you're of Indian origin, you've almost akin success to getting married. You're not quite successful until, you've been hitched. And this is something I've observed when I lived in India, as well as counterparts with Indians around the world. So it became a viable model, and you juxtapose that with all the complexities of having an arranged marriage and a growing young population, which is modernizing day by day. Then you have a very complex sort of ecosystem to navigate through, and that's where we come in.
How do you matchmake, Sunil, in 2020, in contemporary times? What do you do?
Sure. Sure. So the premise of the arranged part of arranged marriage, I think, holds true. So the idea that someone who knows you quite well makes a well-educated recommendation for you to go hang out with someone to see if there's a spark. That's a valid approach, I think, and we've retained that through our dating and matchmaking service. What is not as valid probably is the metrics that that person uses to evaluate who's a good match, right? So, what time of the year they're born, their complexion or their height doesn't make for a great marriage. And it depends what you're chasing. Are you chasing a wedding or a marriage? What we've
Right.
found is, so we retain the arranged part, but those metrics need to be changed for things like, do you like skiing? Do you like cold weather? Do you want children? And are you a meat eater or not?
Smriti, I see you're nodding up a storm. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very a triggering topic for a lot of people, which is, why I understand and was completely expecting a lot of the strong reactions that the show got. And I think we need to think about two things. One is that our values, our traditions as Indians are very much in flux right now in a way that, in this particular generation, in a way that we haven't seen, in the past 5 or 6 generations prior to this. Things were the same for generation after generation, and then suddenly in one generation, everything is changing. So not everybody is going to come along, on that journey at the same pace. There are people who still hold very traditional values, very conservative values, regressive values and problematic ideas that may not even recognize the reasons. Like, for example, my mother, who considers herself a very liberal, progressive person, might still, have at one point, the journey of trying to get me a life partner, have still believed that I would have been happiest with, a Hindu Marwari guy, like somebody from my community, from my background, similar education level, etc. And the reason for that would be, she's dead wrong, as it turns out. But the reason for that is that, traditionally from the background that she comes from, women still went to go live with their husband's family after marriage. And from her perspective and from the perspective of Sima and some other people, the easiest path, to transitioning from your mother's house to your father's house to your father-in-law's house was to have that father-in-law's house be as similar to the father's house as possible. So that was the sort of framework, through which people were evaluating. There was obviously superstition involved too, and I know that underlying implicit in all of this are some very problematic things about, maintaining, caste, things, community bloodlines, things like that. But I think on the surface of it, people were thinking, especially if you have daughters, you were thinking you want the daughter to feel as at home in her new home as possible. So if you were raised vegetarian, you maybe it would be difficult for you to adjust in a meat-eating household. If you were raised, a certain religion or a certain background, it would be difficult to adjust. Of course, that's changed in my generation. I'm married to a Brazilian Irish man, who's, and we live a completely different life. But all of that understanding is not going to happen overnight for everybody. So I just implore people to I understand the urgency of needing to shed some of our more regressive ideas, but I think, let's also think about where people are coming from and how we need to bring them along, on this journey.
Smriti, I want to bring in a clip from a documentary that you made called A Suitable Girl. Have a look here on my laptop. You can see the poster for it. And it tells the story of 3 Indian women trying to get married. And in it, we have Sima Auntie, who also appears in Indian Matchmaking, and she's going through criteria. Criteria is really, really important. Who do you want? What do you want? What does your family want for you? Let's have a listen to some of that criteria.
They generally don't talk about a boy's looks. The only thing that they look for is the wealth. But for a girl, she should be fair-skinned, she should be slim, she should be soft-spoken, perfect eyes, long hair, and, really pretty.
Paru, one of the things I noticed when I was looking at Indian Matchmaking as a piece of TV was a lot of similarities came out about what was needed from the man and what was needed from the woman. What does that tell us about where we are right now in Indian society and also the Indian diaspora?
I mean, it's still a long way to go, right? I mean, as shown in this clip, as Smriti has captured in A Suitable Girl, there are very different kinds of expectations from men and women. We'd like to think, Smriti is right, that we'd like to think that we're sort of evolving in that way where there would be some kind of equality, as it were. But there is no two ways about it, that when it comes to figuring out the criteria for a suitable bride, it begins with a set of physical characteristics: fair-skinned, tall, pretty, hair length, eyes, so on and so forth, and then moves to value systems. So you'd often find in newspaper advertisements, as well as on matrimonial websites, this term, modern yet traditional. And this term is used more for potential brides than for potential grooms. So there's a different kind of expectation from grooms. Having said that, of course, for men also it becomes a bit tricky because what is required of them is this kind of very good income. And it is a financial package that is looked into. And that remains. Now, whether it is a matchmaker, whether it's a matrimonial website, or, mind you, even when it is conversations amongst friends, I wouldn't know much about dating apps. I haven't researched, and I don't know what Sunil's dating app is like. But even in terms of, just choosing someone from your informal networks, from your networks of friendship, from your networks of work, these kind of gendered ideas of suitability are embedded. Some of us can push them back, but I suppose many of us are unable to do that.
Sunil, can I put this to you? This is Yasika Dutt. She's a writer and journalist. We spoke to her a little bit earlier. She also comes from the Dalit caste, which in traditional Indian caste attitudes would be one of the lowest castes. And she talks about castes and also the prejudice around caste when people are looking for a suitable girl or boy to get married to. Let's have a listen to Yasika.
Let's be clear about one thing. In India, arranged marriages are all about caste. In fact, it is through arranged marriages that the caste system has existed for over thousands of years. It is how Brahmins marry other Brahmins, Rajputs marry other Rajputs, and Dalits marry Dalits. All you have to do is look at any newspaper or matrimonial column, and there you will find people looking for brides and grooms within their own caste. That is why it is so important to challenge and question this system of arranged marriages, especially when it is on a Netflix show in a relatively uncritical manner.
Let me take that first statement, Sunil. Arranged marriages are all about caste. Go ahead.
Well, look, I think it's a loaded question. We're fortunate that in the segment of the population that we specifically operate in, caste and family ideas and parents and what parents want for their child, we're not dealing in that sort of clientele. Now, having said that, I think the further down the spectrum you get, this becomes an operating reality. And it's really up to the individual to see if they can free themselves from it. So one of the things that I found when I started Surf Coffee, I had sort of the modern Indian person who's well traveled or lives abroad in mind. Surprisingly, we found that a lot of our clientele are from smaller cities in India, and we have more women than men because they prep the proposition that I get to meet someone on my terms casually, and they're sort of paid you and they're sort of vetted and they're serious about marriage, yet I have the option to sort of walk away without them being none the wiser, is a very compelling proposition in a smaller city in India for a woman who's trying to escape her arranged marriage, dilemma. And a lot of families tend to think that, they're sort of progressive and liberal because they give their child the right to veto the first 2, 3 matches. And I have a theory that if you're dude number 4 or girl number 4, you are going to get married because they've used up their 3 lives to veto. So
Whoa.
the progressive parent says, I've let you say no 3 times, and you've kind of been to this restaurant 3 times already. People are starting to talk. And I let you go, I let you study abroad, but now it's time to rein it in.
Oh, Sunil, this is good intel for anyone who's in that process right now. It's like, be careful where you get to when you're at number 3 or number 4. Smriti, let me put this to you. Sweater is on YouTube. Hi, Sweater. Nice to have you. Sweater says that your show highlighted the issue of casteism, which is present, but now your show, has made us realize how deep-rooted it is. It is a fun show. It's pretty trivial. It's silly. You go for the gags. How do people get these deeper takeaways?
So I think, first of all, I just want to comment on what Yashika said. I have tremendous respect for Yashika. I think she wrote an amazing piece that everyone in The Atlantic about Indian matchmaking that everyone should read to get a deeper understanding of casteism and how it actually, there are very real implications of casteism. If you've enjoyed the show, you should absolutely read that piece to get a deeper understanding of these issues. I don't think, though, I will, take issue with the idea that anything in India is all about anything. It is a very diverse country with a lot of different ideals and a lot of ideals that are in flux. So arranged marriage, I don't think you can say it is all about any one thing because it is so many different things as it is. And in terms of the show, the way we treated it in the show, because there is so much diversity of thought, diversity of ideology, such a huge spectrum of ideas around arranged marriage, for some, like Sunil was saying, it is quite simply somebody that you know and who has known you for a long time, whether it's a family member, or a matchmaker, or somebody who's involved in the process of finding you a life partner. For many people, that is the extent to what, the definition of arranged marriage is. It is simply involvement in somebody who's known you for a long time. For others, it is, the stereotypical, thing that we hear of, someone chooses your husband or your wife for you, you meet them on your wedding day, kind of thing. So there's a huge range between those two things, those two ideas. And we tried in the show, leaving apart the absolutely most regressive traditional, aspects of it, which I think don't happen as much in the major cities and in the sort of urban middle and upper middle class, and certainly not as much in the sort of NRI community anymore. We did try to show as many diverse points of view as possible around the idea of marriage and arranged marriage. And then leave it to the audience.
Can I, Smriti, as you're here, let me just put this to you because I feel this is really important and something that may well have been overlooked. Some of our audience on YouTube are asking why there wasn't any Muslim representation in Indian matchmaking.
Well, for one thing, because it was the first season of the show, and we had a very limited pool of people who were actually even willing to participate in the show. So we had to go with people who are willing to go through this traditionally very private process on TV for a TV show, and that limited our pool of people very dramatically. And then we had to then from there had to filter for people who are going to be honest about the process, who weren't going to try to play a type or play up a certain personality for TV. We wanted people who are authentically in this process, seeking life partners, etc. So and within that, we tried to go for as much diversity, ideologically and in terms of background as we possibly could.
Okay.
So that's one reason. The other reason,
that question came from Amna Shahid. Smriti, if I may, the actual TV series, it's on Netflix right now, Indian Matchmaking, 8 episodes. You can kind of watch it in a whole night. Don't ask me how I know that. But it sparked so much conversation about so many issues about contemporary either love or traditional marriages in India and around the world right now. Here's a collection of thoughts. Let's take a look.
Other than the obvious banality of the show, of course, the two things that pop out for me are one that the matchmaker, she always tries to make people compromise. It's as if you cannot get a spouse unless you give up some part of your personality. And the second more disturbing element is that it completely glosses over the matter of caste. India is still a caste-ridden society, but if you look at the show, it seems that it is not a problem at all. It's all about people like us, it's all about community, but caste is not mentioned at all, which I think is a real problem.
One of the concerns I continue to have is how complexion, height, divorce really continue to be used against South Asian women trying to find a life partner. At the end of the day, we're really looking at a collectivist versus individualist approach to marriage. And whichever way people choose to go, my hope is that it is a dignified and respectful process.
Whether we meet them through family, friends, matrimonial websites, or we meet the masses, I don't think that makes much of a difference. What matters is how good is your relationship. I had a love marriage and an intercaste marriage, and I feel at the end of the day, what matters is how much willing you are to make your marriage work. You should have mutual love and respect, and both of you should be ready to make compromises and sacrifices, because what matters is how you stay together, not how you got together.
So Neil, you already accused me of one loaded question. I'm going to give you another one. Does matchmaking actually work?
Absolutely.
Do those marriages last?
I think so. We've had 10 years of data to support that. Now, I'll go back to kind of some of the comments that have been made previously, and I think the last person, Rashmi, she kind of touched upon what I want to say. I mean, historically, when you had the idea of arranged marriage, expectations were very, very clear. This expectations around adjustment, which has become a real bad word, or sacrifice. However, if you use adjustment or sacrifice in a normal context in a Western society, these are not bad things. These are sort of virtues, because in the Indian framework, in the Indian context, they're singular to the woman to adjust and to kind of completely from taking a new first name, taking a new last name, changing the way you dress, the way you eat, the way you go out. It has sort of tainted this idea of sacrificing and adjusting for your partner, which actually, if partners are on equal terms, that's what it'll take for any relationship to work, whether it's colleagues or mentors or whatnot. What the key difference here is, I think, Indian society, the young Indian population has progressed, and particularly for women, there's been a quantum leap, both in terms of professional responsibility, social independence, the ability to just educate yourself and then do something with it. So there's this weird expectation around having a highly educated partner, a highly educated wife, but doing nothing with that education. So if there's a bit of room for two people to explore, and this is the crux of the company's proposition, it's that space to get to know each other without sort of overcommitting. So arranged marriage becomes really heavy because when two people actually meet, two families are involved, uncles, aunts, a lot of communique is exchanged on both sides. It becomes a very vested decision when those two people meet. Whereas if a guy and a girl still meet in an arranged marriage setting, but they have the room to explore that relationship over several months or a year, like they would, because expectations of individuality have progressed, there's a shot at it working.
All right, Sunil, that ad is now over, but you've made a very good case for arranged marriage. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you, Pano. And also thank you, Smriti. I want to show you something back here on my laptop. We have an ajstream Instagram series that always happens about an hour after our live show. So this is the ajstream Instagram page, at ajstream, very easy to follow. This is Apana's Instagram page, very easy to follow. And on Wednesday at 16:30 GMT, you can see Apana from Indian Matchmaking talking to us on the ajstream Instagram series at 16:30 GMT. If you can't make it on Wednesday 16:30 GMT, go to ajstream on Instagram and you will find it there anytime. Thank you, guests. Take care.